This is the unit review for Chapter 8 and 9, Part 1. This is to prepare you for the 50-point unit quiz that's going to be tomorrow. And this is after I have revised the front page so that the problems are more straightforward. I can see if you understand the concept, but without using fractions in your answers to just show me that you understand. So on the first one, this is already set up in standard form, and in standard form we know that A is going to be 1, B is going to be -6, and C is going to be 8. We're going to use the formula x equals -b over 2a, and our B value is going to plug in on the numerator. The A value is going to be substituted down here in the denominator. So we have -6, and then 2 times 1. So if you have negative, now we have +6 on top. 2 times 1, that's 2. And then 6 divided by 2, we have 3. This 3 is already your axis of symmetry, and it's the x coordinate for your vertex. So it's the one on the left. Now that we have the x value, we're going to substitute that x value back into the original quadratic equation in order to find our y value. So f of x is going to be y. They're worth the same thing. And then x squared, so now it's going to be 3 squared minus 6x, so now it's going to be 6 times 3, and then plus 8. So 3 squared is 9. -6 times 3 is -18. And then we're going to combine from left to right. 9 minus 18 is -9. -9 plus 8 is going to be -1. That means that the y coordinate for our vertex is -1. We can already start putting this point in the graph. So 3, -1 is down here. And then we can go ahead and do the 1, 1, 2, 4. So remember the pattern for 1, 1, 2, 4. You look to see if there's an a value to multiply on the right. We don't have to worry about it. And then now that we have our final 1, 1, 2, 4, we're going to go from this point, from the vertex, 1 over 1 up in both directions. So 1 over 1 up to the left, and then 2 over, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 up. Over here it's going to be 2 over, 1, 2, 3, 4 up. And that already gave us 5 points. We also have, while we're here, the C value, which tells us the y-intercept. So at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right at the top, we're going to have another point there. We can also mirror that point over here across this axis of symmetry. The x-intercepts, this point is 1, 0, and this other point is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. Those are our roots, or our x-intercepts, or our solutions. The y-intercept, we already have it on our graph. It was where y equals 8. So what we're going to do, we're writing a coordinate because we're talking about the point. We're going to put x is 0, y is 8. And then after that, max or min, if you're looking at this graph and it comes down, it doesn't go below the vertex and then it goes back up. That is the minimum. It will never go below the vertex. And then the solutions are the x values for these two coordinates. So we have x equals 1 and also 4. So both of these would be your solutions. Next problem, we're going to do it exactly the same way. We're going to use x equals -b over 2a. So it's going to be -2 over 2 times a. So a is a -1. Be careful with your signs. -2 makes it a +2 for your numerator. 2 times -1, -2 for your denominator. When you simplify that, 2 divided by -2 is going to be a -1. Again, for your vertex, there's your x coordinate. For your axis of symmetry, there's your axis of symmetry. Then, just like last time, substitute this number back into the original, and you get y equals -1 squared minus 2 times -1 plus 8. So be careful right here. -1 squared, remember exponent gets done before you multiply. So -1 squared is going to be a +1 and then positive 1 times a negative 1 is going to be negative 1 at the end for this first term. If it's negative 2 times negative 1, that's a positive 2. And then we combine from left to right. So negative 1 plus 2 would be 1. And then 1 plus 8 is going to be 9. So our y-coordinate for the vertex is going to be 9. So to graph this point, this vertex, negative 1 to the left, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is just barely off the graph right there. This time, when we do our 1, 1, 2, 4 pattern, we're going to multiply this right side by that negative 1, that's the a value. So we're going to rewrite it 1, negative 1 to negative 4, which means we're going to be going down instead of going up. So from this point, 1 over, 1 down, in both directions, 1 over, 1 down, and then 2 over, 4 down. So 2 over, 1, 2, 3, 4 down. Over here, 2 over, 1, 2, 3, 4 down. This time, if we try to do the y-intercept by using the c value, we already got it when we did the 1, 1, 2, 4 pattern. So that means we didn't get an extra point. We can see our axis of symmetry right here that goes through the vertex. And we still have an idea of what the graph should look like. Now on this one, because we don't have our roots, we're going to have to go one step further. We're going to have to go into solving by factoring. If you take this original equation, negative x squared minus 2x plus 8, and you want to know when the y is 0, what are the two coordinates? Instead of a y on the other side of the equal sign, put a 0 here. This negative in the front, we're going to want to factor out a negative out of all of these, so we're going to take negative 1 out of here. Now it's going to be a positive x squared, a positive 2x, and a negative 8. And then we can do the x that we use to keep our information organized. Remember that when you're factoring, the negative 8 is going to be the top number because 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. The b value, the 2, is going to be your bottom number. You're finding factors of negative 8 that combine to give you a 2. So if you have 8, you have 1 times 8 or 2 times 4, and those are the only factors. 1 and 8, if you subtract them, gives you 7. We don't want that. 2 and 4, if you subtract them, gives you 2. That's going to be the pair you want. You want your answer to be a positive 2. That means the bigger one has to be positive and the smaller one has to be negative. Now you can finish factoring this out. You're going to have an x on both of those. This negative 2 is going to fill out one of these factors, and this positive 4 fills out the other one. Now you set each one of the factors equal to 0. Negative 1 equal to 0 doesn't work. X minus 2 equal to 0. You get a positive 2. X plus 4 equal to 0. You get a negative 4. That means that at positive 2 and at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to get 2 more points on that parabola. And your x-intercepts are going to be those coordinates of negative 4, 0 and positive 2, 0. Your y-intercept, we can just look at the c value. It's going to be 8, but it's going to be the coordinate, so it's going to be x is 0, y is 8. And then over here for max or min, in this case, the graph goes up. It never goes above 9, and then it comes back down. So that means this is a max. The solutions would be those two x values. So you have negative 4 and positive 2. On the back side, you're solving by factoring. The first one, set up your x. The negative 4 goes on top. Negative 3 goes on the bottom. You're looking for factors of 4 that give you a 3. So if you are subtracting them, because it's a negative, 1 and 4 is going to give you 3. 2 minus 2 would have given us 0. So we want to use the factors 1 and 4, and we want it to be a negative number when we subtract them. So that means that the bigger one has to be negative, the smaller one has to be positive, and now we can write out our factors. The x squared is going to get split x and x. The plus 1 and the minus 4 are going to fill out the second terms that we need. If you set this equal to 0, you find out you get negative 1. And if you make this one equal to 0, you get a positive 4. Same idea. The 27 goes to the top, negative 12 down at the bottom. Factors of 27 that are going to give us a 12 when we add them together, because it's a positive 27, would be 1 and 27 would be 28, but 3 and 9 would give us a 12. Use those. We want it to be negative 12, so it's negative 3 and negative 9, because when you add them together, you combine them, you get a negative 12, and when you multiply them, negative and negative makes positive 27. Now you can set up your parentheses. The x squared, you can split into an x here and an x there. The minus 3 and the minus 9 are going to fill out the other terms. When you set this equal to 0, you get 3. When you set this equal to 0, you get 9. Next problem, same steps. You're going to use this to organize your information. The 1 times negative 36 fills out the top of this x. 16 fills out the bottom. You're looking for factors of 36 that subtract to give you a 16. So you have 1 times 36. You have 2 times 18. I think that's already it, because if I subtract that, I get 16. So a positive 2, a 2 and an 18. And then after that, remember you want to subtract these. So that means we actually want this number to be the positive, because it's bigger, and the 2 to be the smaller one, to be negative. Now we fill out our parentheses. X gets split. Negative 2 over here, positive 18 over there. When you make x minus 2 equal to 0, you get 2. When you get x plus 18 equal to 0, you get negative 18. And those are your two answers. Those are your solutions. This one's the first one that you have to watch out, because this is not set up in standard form. That negative 20 is on the wrong side of the equal sign. We want it to be a 0 over here. So to fix that, we're going to add 20 to move it across that equal sign, and it's going to be positive 20 on the left, which leaves us with 0 on the right. That's what we want. After that, keep doing what we've been doing. 1 times 20, 20. Negative 12 down at the bottom. For 20, the factors are 1 times 20, or 2 times 10, or 4 times 5. We're looking for factors of 20 that add up and give us a 12. So this would be 21. This one would have been 9. That gives us the 12 we want. Now focus on the signs. Signs are supposed to be the same. The bigger one's negative, but since they're the same, they're both negative. Now we set up our parentheses. X squared gets split. Negative 2 and negative 10. Set each one equal to 0. X minus 2 equals 0 gives us 2. X minus 10 equals to 0 gives us 10. Number 7. There's a 2 in the front, so we check to see if we can factor out a 2 out of all of these, but we can't. So that means that when we set up our x, we're not just going to use the negative 12. We're going to multiply it. 2 times negative 12 is negative 24 for our top number. 5 still stays 5. The b value doesn't change. And we're still looking for factors of negative 24 that subtract and give us a 5. So I know that I have 1 times 24, or 2 times 12, or 3 times 8, or 4 times 6. And out of those, 3 and 8 will subtract to give me a 5. I want them to be different signs, but I want the bigger one to be positive. So that means the smaller one has to be negative. And then when I set up the parentheses, I'm just going to put 2x from the 2x squared. I'm going to put 2x in the front of both of these. And then the negative 3 and the positive 8. Fill out the rest. Now, I'm going to try to see if I can factor out a greatest common factor. And over here, the 2x and the 8 can get a 2 factored out of them. So 2x minus 3 is going to stay 2x minus 3. But I can factor a 2 out. So I'm going to throw it way over here in the front. And now that I factored out that 2, I'm going to have x plus 4. And I can continue solving it like before. 2 equal to 0 doesn't work. 2x minus 3 equal to 0. When I work that out, I get 3 halves. And x plus 4 equal to 0. When I subtract 4, I get a negative 4. So I have negative 4 and I have positive 3 halves. Number 8, again, it's not set up in standard form. I need to move this 15. So I'm going to rewrite it. 6x squared is going to stay there. The negative x stays there on the left. And then when I move this across, it's going to be negative 15. And now I have 0 on the right side. This is the standard form that I'm looking for. 6, 1, and 15 don't have anything in common, so I cannot factor out a greatest common factor. That means that I'm going to multiply 6 times 15 to get my top number. And I'm going to get a negative 90 because it's a positive 6 and a negative 15. Down here I have a negative 1. And if I'm thinking through this, I know that the first thing that pops into my mind is 9 times 10 makes 90. And if I subtract 9 and 10, I do get a 1. So that means these are going to be my factors without having to go through the whole list. I want my bigger number to be a negative. So the 10 is going to be the negative, the 9 is going to be positive. I want them to be different signs because that's a negative sign, which means I had to multiply a positive times a negative. Then I set up my parentheses. The 6x goes in the front of both of these parentheses. And then I have a positive 9 and a negative 10. And you try to factor out the greatest common factor in each parentheses separately. So over here, I can factor out 3 from both of these. And that leaves me with 2x plus 3. And on this second factor, I can get a 2 out of both of those. So I'm actually going to put it in the front over here. And if I factor a 2 out, this 6x becomes 3x. And this negative 10 becomes negative 5. And then 2 times 3 is 6. But when I make that equal to 0, that doesn't work. 2x plus 3 equal to 0 gives me negative 3 halves. And then 3x minus 5 equal to 0 gives me positive 5 thirds. So my two answers would be negative 3 halves and positive 5 thirds. Next problem, this is the difference of two perfect squares. So when I do this one, because x squared is a perfect square and 49 is a perfect square, I can just go the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 49 is 7. And then remember that there's no middle value because the signs were different. So those are my two factors. If I set this equal to 0, I get negative 7. If I get this one, make it equal to 0, I get a positive 7. On this one, I only have two terms, but if I look, that's not a perfect square. I do notice, though, that both of those can get a 2 divided out of them. So if I factor out a 2, I get x squared minus 4. And then this, just like the last time, is the difference of two perfect squares. So I'm going to set up my parentheses. X squared, if I square root it, is going to give me x for both of those. 4, if I square root it, gives me 2. Signs are different. Set each one equal to 0. 2 equal to 0 doesn't work. X plus 2 equal to 0 gives me negative 2. And then x minus 2 equal to 0 gives me a positive 2. Number 11, again, I have only two terms, but I do notice that I can divide them both by 2. If I divide them both by 2, I get 4x squared minus 25 equal to 0. 4x squared is a perfect square. 25 is a perfect square. So I'm going to continue like I did on 9 and 10. So I'm going to go 4x squared square rooted gives me 2x. 25 square rooted gives me 5. One's a positive, one's a negative, just like before. So 2 equal to 0 doesn't work. 2x plus 5 equal to 0 gives me negative 5 halves. And then 2x minus 5 equal to 0 gives me positive 5 halves. And the last problem, the 12, the 14, and the 6 can all be divided by 2. If I divide 12x squared by 2, I get 6x squared. And if I divide the 14x divided by 2, it's down to 7x, and the 6 divided by 2 is down to 3. From here, I'm going to look for my factors using this to organize my information. Since there's a number in front of the x squared, I'm going to multiply 6 times negative 3. That's negative 18. And then I'm going to have this negative 7 that goes down to the bottom. I'm finding factors of 18 that combine to give me a 7. So 1 and 18, that gives me 17. 2 times 9, that gives me the 7 that I'm looking for. 3 times 6 would have given me 6 minus 3, which is 3. So I'm going to use the 2 and I'm going to use the 9. The signs are different because I subtracted them. They're supposed to be a negative, so my bigger one is negative, my smaller one is positive. And then after that, set up my parentheses. That 6x squared is going to be 6x when I put it as the first term. And then this positive 2 and this negative 9, fill out the rest of the factors. 6x and 2 can both be divided by 2, so I'm going to put that over here in the front. Over here with the 2 that was already outside. And that leaves me 3x plus 1. And then 6x minus 9, I can get a 3 out of those. So I'm going to multiply it over here. It's getting kind of crowded, sorry. And if I divide by 3, that's going to give me 2x minus 3. And then now I'm going to multiply these all together. So 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12. But 12 equal to 0 doesn't work. 3x plus 1 equal to 0. That gives me negative 1/3 when you work it out. And then 2x minus 3 equal to 0, which is going to give me a positive 3/2. So those are all my solutions. So if you have questions, you have me on remind, you can take a picture of any other problems you want me to explain to you individually.